Two big stories out of Delaware State. First off, their 2025 football schedule has been released. And secondly, Clinton Portis is their new running backs coach. Oh, yeah, it's locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darian Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me, making Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. Just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusives. Starts with an S and ends with an S. We'll wrap up today's episode with a look at Patrick Crarey's Coach of the Year resume, why it's not as cut and dry as you may believe. In the first two segments, we'll take a look at the biggest Delaware State stories coming out of Wednesday afternoon. Clinton Portis is their running backs coach, but they also dropped their schedule. Typically, a coaching announcement would take precedent over a schedule release, but I wanted to do something a tad bit different. Have I looked at Delaware State's schedule? Kind of. I glanced at it because I've had an idea of when I wanted to see Delaware State versus Norfolk State. And we've talked about it on the show, but maybe you missed that episode. So I'll do a little bit of a rehashing. But I also wanted to live react to whenever they are going to play the Spartans because I don't know when Delaware State and Norfolk State are going to play. What did I look for? I looked for homecoming because that's where I wanted to place this game. I had probably three thoughts about when Norfolk State and Delaware State would play each other. The first thought was the one that Desean Jackson kind of just pushed out there, the idea that they will play in Philadelphia, which I still think is a good idea. I proposed it for year 3, have 2 home games and then a neutral site. I understand people who say strike while the iron is hot. I don't think the iron is cooling down at any moment, but I do understand saying let's do this immediately. I can tell you right now, that is not what they chose to do. My second thought about it was that it should be Norfolk State. It should be homecoming. Norfolk State versus Delaware State should be Delaware State's homecoming game because I've been really big lately on talking about building on top of an event. I don't want to have to make everything special, or I don't want to have to lean on something being special and that's the only thing that's really pulling people in. For example, homecoming is a big deal regardless. People are going to come back to the yard for homecoming regardless. But if you have it Delaware State versus Norfolk State, Michael Vick versus Desean Jackson, I think that's going to bring even more people. So while homecoming is always big, you may want to make it even bigger at the same time, because I can view all of these different counterpoints and understand where people are coming from. A lot of people are saying, well, if homecoming is already going to be big, let's make another weekend another mainstream event, which I understand and is what they eventually or ultimately chose to do. But for me, I wanted to see it at homecoming. So when I glanced and I saw that it wasn't homecoming, I said, okay, guess it ain't that. And I did see where Delaware State versus Norfolk State was at, but I didn't really pay attention because I was like, is that homecoming? And I couldn't find it. I looked for homecoming. So with all that being said, this is kind of like a live reaction to where it's going to be. Oh, I'm sorry. I only gave my two thoughts. My third thought was I would like to see Norfolk State versus Delaware State be their first MEAC game. So I had a couple of thoughts. Having in Philadelphia, that's not happening. Have it and for homecoming, that's not happening. Then my last thought was, can we have this be each of their first MEAC games? The reason I thought that'd be good is because, why not introduce them to the MEAC against each other? I just thought that made a lot of sense. They're two of the more exciting hires that we've seen in a long time. They're two of the biggest names that are going to be in the conference, and they're going to be linked not only because of the fact that they're in the conference together, not only because of the fact that they were hired in the same offseason, but also because they're former teammates for with the Philadelphia Eagles. So, like Michael Vick and Desean Jackson were going to be linked. Why not let their MEAC debuts be linked together? Let's see if the schedule makers decided to follow that. So here goes kind of a live reaction at what the schedule is. So Delaware State's going to open up at Delaware, then versus Albany, then versus Bowie State, then at St. Francis, at Sacred Heart, at Monmouth. Then you get homecoming versus Southern Connecticut State. And you go North Carolina Central, then Norfolk State. So this is the second MEAC. And just to close it out, you go Morgan State at Morgan State versus Howard versus South Carolina State. So this is pretty solid. You get your first MEAC action is going to be on the road. So I'm not mad at this. I'm not mad at this at all. I kind of had this feeling that homecoming wasn't going to be in the midst of MEAC action once I realized it wasn't a conference opponent. So I just wanted to see. Desean Jackson is going to open up MEAC play at North Carolina Central. That's going to be a tough one. Central is always over the last couple of years an extremely tough team to go up against. I don't expect that to be any different in 2025. So to have Jackson's first game be against a team that was a game away from being in a Celebration Bowl, it's going to be a huge test. It is. And then he gets to play Michael Vick after that. So that's interesting. I kind of like it. It's not what I would have went for. I would have had Michael Vick versus Desean Jackson as the MEAC opener. I definitely would have done that. But at the same time, let them get a week of action in the conference and then let them see each other. Okay. It's going to be a big time event no matter what, but that's interesting. Okay. I'm trying to think about how I feel about it live because like I said, this isn't something that I hope y'all don't think I'm just out here playing because why would I be out of things to say already? Y'all know me. You know me. I'm going to talk at the end of the day. But I do think that doing this early was better. Part of the reason I wanted to be first is so that both Vick and Jackson could have their introduction to the conference together. But I also think that if they have let's go worst case scenario, right? The reason I think it's important to schedule Michael Vick versus Desean Jackson early is because the worst case scenario is never really that bad. Like let's say you have a poor out of conference schedule. That happens to all HBCUs frequently. So there's no luster that's lost there. But let's say you get into MEAC season and now you're 1-3, 0-4, and it's a 1-3 Delaware State versus 0-4 Norfolk State, or vice versa, and they got to go against each other. Are we still going to be excited to see Michael Vick and Desean Jackson lead up or lead their teams against each other? Yes. But I kind of feel like that's a pregame storyline that no one's going to really want to watch the game to follow. Like, Desean Jackson versus Michael Vick does not require you to be invested in the actual game. It's a mere storyline that you check in before the game. Oh, cool. Look, two teammates going against each other. And then after the game, you say who won. But it doesn't require you to watch the 60 minutes of action. So if they're doing bad at the end of the season, the intrigue will be lost. Now, next year in the offseason, we'll say, all right, first year down, let's see how they do in year two. That's how it will go. No matter what happens in this offseason, we will be excited for Norfolk State and Delaware State not facing each other, but the two teams as individuals in 2026. But as far as the 2025 matchup, with them being the second game of conference play, there's no luster that will be lost because they'll still have, at worst, an 0-1 record in conference. This is still going to be interesting. At the end of that game, somebody will have a 500 record. So, scheduling it early was better. Scheduling it early was better because it just provides a greater security blanket that the game will still feel important. Like I've said, Delaware State versus Norfolk State and Michael Vick versus Desean Jackson are two separate things. Desean Jackson versus Michael Vick is a pregame storyline that feels cool to highlight. And then after the game, you just go to see who won. But if you want to actually see these two teams go toe to toe, and it's not like they were great last year, the security blanket is to put it early in the MEAC season. That way, at the worst, you're not looking at two teams who are certified poor squads. I love the security blanket. I'm hoping that it's not the worst case scenario, but even if it is, it won't impact this matchup on what day is this? November 1st. November 1st. So let's get into another Delaware State topic. And this time it's Clinton Portis, who is going to be the new running backs coach for Delaware State. Let's break it down because I think this is kind of a new type of addition. And also, I think it sends a sign of what they're preaching out there at Dover. So let's do this as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by Roy in Attention. Locked On HBCU fans, the future of college sports is here, and it's transparent. Before the Roy app, NIL negotiations often happened under the table, and fans didn't have a clear way to directly support the athletes that they love. Now, with Roy, you get to be a part of the change and support whatever your school is, whether it's Grambling, Delaware State, or Norfolk State. You get to support their athletes in the most transparent way possible. Roy, the NIL app, allows you to choose the player that you want to support, decide how much to contribute, receive exclusive content from the athletes you back. And the best part is that if the player transfers, because we know that happens a lot, if they transfer, you get your money back. It's risk-free. It's a risk-free way to show your support, and the Roy app is giving fans control. No more uncertainty. No more of it. So you go ahead and download the Roy app today from the App Store and start backing your school's athletes the way they deserve with transparency, trust, and a real impact. This is the future of college sports. Join it now by downloading Roy and supporting your favorite players. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day. For your second listen, make sure you're checking out Locked On Pelicans. Yes, the Pelicans. I know they haven't been going too strong this year, but my guy Jake Madison is pulling up some great content as we come out of the All-Star weekend. Now, I want to keep rolling with the Delaware State train because Clinton Portis is joining the coaching staff at Delaware State. And I think this is the first real hire that you've seen that is resembling the lack of experience, but going to the positional coaches. Let me explain what I mean. First of all, I'm surprised you haven't seen it. Deion Sanders has hired Warren Sapp and Marshall Falk at Colorado. But when he was at Jackson State, I don't remember him making hires like this. He went and hired coaches who had been working for a while. I don't think he really hired former players with low experience or notable players with low experience. I mentioned notable because Deion also played in a different time, right? So you have to remember, I'm younger. Players who were slightly prominent, a Clinton Portis from that era, I may not know. But to my knowledge, I don't remember it happening, right? So when you're looking at Clinton Portis to Delaware State, I kind of make him similar to Desean Jackson, where Jackson doesn't have a lot of experience. He's probably getting this because of the name recognition, and I think Clinton Portis is getting this job because of a name recognition, which some people have a problem with. I'm just noting it as an observation. I really don't care about Desean Jackson getting a job. I don't care about Michael Vick getting a job, Eddie George getting a job, Deion Sanders getting a job. Like those things don't really make me happy or irritated. I have no emotional response to that. But when I'm looking at Clinton Portis, it screams, hey, we do this or we did this. We can show you how to do it because we did it. It's firsthand experience that we're giving you. It's not years of showing others. It's I actually did it at a high level. If you want to know how to get there, I can show you, which is something that Coach Jackson said at his post game, or excuse me, not his post game, but his introductory press conference, is that where you want to go, I've been. And that's not a direct quote. That's just a general summation, but the principle is there. Everybody wants to make it to the league. I can tell you how to get there. I can show you how to get there, and I can talk to some people that help you get there. I think Clinton Portis and the hiring to make him your running backs coach gives all of those same incentives. It's the same button being pushed. And I don't know if you're going to see, I don't know. I'm not going to name anybody, but I don't know if you're going to see another wide receiver come in as a wide receiver coach or a former NFL corner and just gonna be like, okay, now you get Namdi Asamoah or something, right? Like you're not gonna see Namdi Asamoah pop up on the staff. Who knows? I don't know if you're gonna see that. But the point is, at least with Jackson and with Clinton Portis, the move tells you exactly what they're preaching to the players. And I do think that it's an interesting mindset to have. It's one that I don't see frequently, so I can't tell you if I think it'll work or won't work. But what I will say is that I don't know if it equates to immediate success, because being a former player does not mean you know how to coach. Because you knew how to do it does not mean you can tell somebody how to do it. I think coaching is a strategy. Coaching is something that does take work. So you have to know how to deliver the message. Some people are natural at that, right? Like Clinton Portis was a natural character. He was a natural character. So I could see him kind of connecting with the athletes a little quicker than other people, maybe. But at the same time, if you have to get into the nitty gritty of how to help them with their vision, who knows? Like, how can I predict that when he's never done it? When I say done it, I mean tell somebody, right? Like, here's the thing. I like to think that I'm a pretty good host of the show. And I would like to think that you feel that way as well, seeing that you're an everyday and you're here very frequently. I would like to feel this way. But I'd be lying to you if I told you I could just tell everybody how to hop onto a microphone and become a podcast host. I've tried it, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Because I think what we realize is that a lot of us do things the way that we do it, but that doesn't work for everybody. You have to kind of find your way. And for Clinton Portis, for Desean Jackson too, as well, I wonder if you're going to see that. Michael Vick as well. It goes for all of these guys. I wonder if you're going to see, this is how I did it. I got it this way. My brain works this way. Everybody's brain don't work that way. So I will be paying attention to that. But this is something I thought was funny. So I knew that Desean Jackson and Clinton Portis both played in Washington, right? But there was no overlap between them. Matter of fact, what was really interesting is that there was barely any overlap in the league. Desean Jackson came into the league in 2008. Technically, Clinton Portis retired in 2012, but he didn't play again after 2010. And I don't know what he was doing for those 2 seasons, but if you want to be realistic, there's 3 years that those two players overlapped in the league, and they never were teammates. Do you have to become teammates with somebody to be friends with them? No. But I was trying to find the tie. Clinton Portis is from Mississippi, went to University of Miami, right? Like, there's no real tie to Desean Jackson, who is from California, went to Cal. They're from different sections of the country. They were on different teams. They never played together. So, like, they could still become friends. I'm not trying to say that, but I was just looking for the overlap. One thing I did find interesting is that in trying to find out the exact origins of where Clinton Portis is from, where he claims, right? He does claim Mississippi because he was there until he was in middle school. In trying to find all of that, I saw a video where he was telling a story and he was rocking a Howard hoodie. Talked about his best friend or one of his best friends going to Alcorn. So, just HBCU tie there. I thought that was a pretty nice cherry on top. His son, Camden Portis, 3-star cornerback, going to University of Miami 2026, I believe. He's committed right now. I think you'll probably see him flip. It wouldn't be shocking to see Portis try to make some of those Florida ties, some of the Mississippi ties. Just in general, I know he's not a recruiting expert, but he's a part of the team, and I'm sure that he has a lot of influence in that area with some of the recruits. And if we're talking about 3-star guys, maybe even a 4-star, but if we're talking about 3-star guys, it wouldn't be shocking to see some of the better players from Portis' son's high school. Wouldn't be shocking to see some of those better players. You have some competition. FAMU is tough competition for sure. But it wouldn't stun me. I think I've seen something this offseason that spoke about FAMU not securing the backyard. So just some things to think about. One last thing. Now, here goes conspiracy theory. This is crazy, but follow me. What if Clinton Portis hops on the phone with a fellow Hurricane and Edgerrin James and says, hey, I'm at Delaware State now. Would your son be interested in being a Hornet? I think the runway is there for Eaton James to have a special year at Howard. But what if he gets a call from his dad, say, hey, I was talking to Clinton. I don't know how close that James and Portis are, but what if he says I was talking to Clinton and he has his vision, and I think that he was a pretty good running back himself. I think he show you the ropes and everything. What if Clinton Portis is the Delaware State Hornet in 20, or not Clinton Portis, but Eden James is a Delaware State Hornet in 2025. I think that I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm not even saying it's likely. I'm just saying I'm interested. I'm interested. The Miami connection between his dad and the new coach at Delaware State pulls me in a little bit, knowing that they would work side by side. I could see it. I could see it. Anyway, another thing that I could see is Patrick Crarey being the SWAC Coach of the Year. But what would have to happen for him to nail that down? And what would have to happen for him to lose it? Let's break all of that down as we continue with Locked On HBCU. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day, every day, making it all the way to segment 3. And I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. We've broken down 2 of the Delaware State stories, but at the same time, I like this little Patrick Crarey storyline. So about 3 weeks, a little under 3 weeks, to be honest, about 2.5. There was a story by HBCU Sports on whether or not Patrick Crarey was the SWAC Coach of the Year. At that time, I felt it was way too premature for me to think about who would win Coach of the Year. I'll say this. I thought that they may have been early to the party. I may have been late. Who knows? But as we sit here at the end of the month, it's definitely a conversation. As we sit here at the end of the month, Patrick Crarey should be a lot of people's favorite to win SWAC Coach of the Year. Does he actually pull it off? I want to break down the case for and the case against Patrick Crarey. Now, even in early February, we knew what it was. We always knew what it was because FAMU has not been successful for a while. Patrick Crarey comes in, and let's take all of the things around his hire and put it to the side for right now. Let's put it to the side for right now. Patrick Crarey stepped into a situation where FAMU was coming off of the back-to-back years of absolutely poor success. Absolutely poor success. And in his first year, he wasn't supposed to turn around like this. FAMU has already won more SWAC games in 2025 than they did in 2024 and 2023 combined. And that is the overall basis of why many people will say Patrick Crarey should be the Coach of the Year. You look at a program that has been dead in the water, and he brought them to being a contender in one season. That transformation from 23/24 on to 2025, that is the calling card of Patrick Crarey's season. If you want to say, well, why is Patrick Crarey there and he's not number 1? It's because nobody expected him to be number 2. No one expected him to be number 3. No one expected him to really be in the mix, to be honest. And I think there's a lot of people included in that nobody. There's a lot of people included in the amount of people who doubted FAMU and Patrick Crarey. Deservedly so. You're not supposed to turn around a program as quickly as Crarey did, which speaks volumes about what he's been able to do with that Rattler program, right? Over the last 2 years, they've won less SWAC games combined than they did in 2025. That is not a stat that should be forgotten, so I have no problem repeating it. This is my thing about Patrick Crarey and why he may not win the Coach of the Year. Because to me, he should be the favorite. Right now, he should be the favorite because of what he's been able to do. But history would tell you that Patrick Crarey is not going to win the SWAC Coach of the Year. Is it enough for him to break precedent? I think so. But what if he gets swept by Southern? He already lost to the Jaguars once. What if it happens again? Southern right now is at the top of the conference. History tells you that winning the SWAC regular season title will get you the Coach of the Year. You just go over the last 5 seasons. Last year, Grambling wins it. Dante Jackson wins Coach of the Year. The year before that, Alcorn and Grambling, they split the conference, right? Like they split the regular season title. Landon Bussey and Jackson, they both split the Coach of the Year. You look in 2022, Bussey wins Coach of the Year. Alcorn wins the conference. 2021 and 2020, Byron Smith wins Coach of the Year. Prairie View wins the conference. So over the last 5 years, the winning the coach of the year has been connected to winning the conference. I do not think that FAMU is going to win the conference because they are 3 games behind, and this is a regular season award. What they do in the tournament does not matter for this. I don't think that they're going to win the conference title. So now the question becomes, does the conference say that what Crarey did was special enough to break precedent? I mean, I could ask you the question. I'll answer it, right? Is FAMU going from where they've been over the last couple of years to where they are this year enough to break the precedent of the SWAC coach of the year going to the team's coach who won the conference? I think it is. Is it enough to specifically take down Southern if Southern wins out through the rest of the year? They only have 1 loss on the season. They win the conference and they swept FAMU. That's a difficult question for me, because what's the argument then? Is it just the rags to riches story? Because Southern comes in and they weren't supposed to win the conference. Were they projected to be as bad as FAMU? No, but they weren't projected to win the conference, and to come in and dominate and only have 1 loss on the season, that's a darn good resume for coach of the year. To me, in totality, Patrick Crarey should be your favorite. I tend to lean towards the fact that nobody expected them to be this good. And all he really has to do is end the season strong. And to me, strong is probably 3-2. There's 5 games left. If he can go 3-2, end with especially if it's 4-1, and end up with a top 3 to top 4 standing in the SWAC, yeah, that's probably going to be my coach of the year. But on the flip side, I do understand people who say Southern only has 1 loss. Southern might win the conference. Southern might sweep FAMU. If all of those things happen, what's the argument? And to me, it still falls back on, how do you define things? FAMU had very little expectations. Very little expectations. And I think at the end of the day, I come from a football background. I do. I come from a football background. And in the NFL, that would get you coach of the year. I'm going to give it to Coach Crarey as well. Nobody expected him to do anything. Nobody. All right. So it'll be interesting. Also, I'll say this. Beating Southern. If FAMU beats Southern, write it in pen. There'll only be 1 game left after that. But if FAMU beats Southern, Patrick Crarey is your coach of the year. Point blank, period. I don't even think there's any debating when it comes to that, because now you will have missed out on being swept. So that head-to-head thing is a little bit different. Yeah, I think that FAMU just needs to beat Southern, and Patrick Crarey will win it. And if you beat Southern, I can guarantee you that you'll win 2 other games, maybe even 3 other games, if not all of your remaining matchups. But on tomorrow's episode, tomorrow will be Friday. So on Friday episode, we'll be previewing the Legacy Bowl, probably do a little bit of a recap on what's been happening in practice. Let me say this. I told you I wasn't going to do another segment on Elijah Williams, and I try not to lie, which is why I tell you Carson Vincent may or may not be involved every day. Elijah Williams absolutely dominated and demolished somebody in one-on-one, and I heard he was doing this on a regular basis again. But no segment necessary. On tomorrow's episode, we'll be previewing the upcoming Legacy Bowl. In the meantime, in between time, until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.